everybody. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Art of Heart. I'm Marissa Campbell. And as you can tell in my background, I'm back in my home studio. For those of you watching on YouTube, if you're listening, it's snowing outside. It's our first snow of the year. And as a girl who grew up in Florida and snow was like not a thing, I absolutely love when it snows to look at from the inside. But when you go out on the outside, it's a dirty mess most of the time. It's the first week in December, and I am super excited about today's guest. So, a little background. We share a family, and by that I mean we have become family over the years, and I am super excited for her to share her transformational story. And I think one of the things we sometimes forget in life, because life gets so busy and we get so focused on whatever's next, that we forget that we are often butterflies and that things are transforming around us, and we forget that these amazing things are happening because we're just heads down focused on whatever's next. So I'm excited for you guys to meet my friend and to hear her story. So without further ado, will you introduce yourself, please?
I can. Good morning, guys. My name is Niove Rodriguez, and I am a social service worker for a nonprofit here in my town. And so I do a lot of community outreach with the public and things like that. So it's pretty much what I do.
What is a social service worker? What does that mean?
What I do is I assist my social workers that I work with in my department. So if they need me to do visits for their families, if they have children who are in some of our foster homes and they were required to do court order visits with their biological families, I monitor those visits and then I write up what happened at the visit, how the parents were interacting with their child, and things like that. I also represent our company out in the community when we're doing any of our fundraisers. Right now, we're doing Holiday of Hope, things like that. So I get out and I speak to people in the community, let them know who we are, how they can help our kids in our community, because there's so many kids that need help right now. So that's basically what I do. I'm in the trenches. I'm the person, I'm the go-to. I'm who they go to when they need anything. Go, can you go pick this up? Can you go take this kid here? This kid needs this. Can you find this for me? So I'm that person and I absolutely love it. I love being of service.
You know, being in the trenches is something that I discovered. I can't talk apparently this morning. That I discovered that I liked a long time ago. I had a mentor, somebody I looked up to, who was very smart and very advanced in his career, and he was like the right hand man to our CEO at the time. And I looked at him and I was like, "How come you're not the CEO?" And he's like, "Oh, I like to be in the trenches." And I'm like, "Huh?" And he's like, "I'm actually a mechanic. I like to turn the wrench."
Mhm.
And that analogy has always stuck with me because I think sometimes we step back and we don't realize that being close to whatever the cause is, being close to the customer, being in your case close to the kids
Yeah.
who need so much help, like that is the work, and that is what a cool thing you get to do and help so many kids along the way.
And it's one of those things, it got me back to who I was. I had lost that part of me. I had lost that connection to me in the situation that I was in, and I lost that core of who I was. The part of me that loved being in the community, that loved to help, that loved to talk and be with people. I had shut down and become this person I didn't recognize, but this job brought that back. This job gave me that back. Part of that. That's only part of the transformation, but that was such a big part of it because that's who I am. I am someone who serves others and I find joy in that. I find joy in helping, especially when it comes to people like children or people who have been hurt or anyone who's ever felt not wanted or unseen. I'm drawn to people like that because I know how that feels. I've been there and I know what it's like to feel like no one can see you. And that's why I connect so much with my kids, because I know to just feel like you're just not present. No one sees you. That's an awful feeling. And I was able to come out of that. And then now that I can do that, and that feels really good.
It's like see one, do one, teach one, but in a whole different way,
Exactly.
and being able to, connect with kids in arguably, like, maybe the hardest time of their life, right? And there's,
Absolutely.
that instability, and we know this, like, all too well as humans, that sometimes a kind voice or, someone takes a moment to pause and ask you how you're doing today, or, just the idea of being seen, especially as a child, um those connection points are so critical, and I know it's hard work, and I'm sure there are some days that the load is heavy, but
Very.
what an important load to carry.
Yeah, and I try to carry it with grace if I can. There are days where I don't. There are days where I have to kind of excuse myself and take a minute and regroup. But again, it's helped so much on my journey of finding myself again and getting back to who I was, that it's such a part of the story. It's definitely a part of the story.
That's so cool. So as we get into the first story, I think it's really interesting that because I've got to watch you take this journey a little bit, right? Like when
Yes,
we met, um, uh, you were a very different person than you are today.
absolutely.
And I mean, very different. Like you look the same on the outside, kind of, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? And
yeah.
like your energy is still this vibrant, warm, caring human, but like you're different now. And so I want to kick us off by tell us the first story.
So my first story, the title I selected was Awakening, and the reason because I was in a situation where it was a dark place. I was in a very very dark place. I was in an unhappy marriage, and I became very depressed. Very depressed. There's a difference between, and I learned this in the situation, between depression and being sad. And I think it runs a fine line, but people have to understand it's very different. If you're sad,
Mhm.
you can find something to make you happy, and that changes it. But when you're in depression, clinical depression, depression that requires assistance, and you don't know that you're in that, it's an even darker place because you don't understand what's happening to you. You wake up one day, you look in the mirror, I don't know that person. I don't know this person. I was so depressed. I was gaining a lot of weight. I was eating my emotions. I was shoving things that I wanted to say that I couldn't find words to say. I was eating them and shoving them down. And that was the easiest way to explain it. And over time, I shrunk myself. I went from being someone who stopped smiling, stopped talking to people, stopped interacting with people, and I got lost in my own head. And there was a lot of self-loathing, a lot of self-hatred, a lot of you know, I was setting myself up for failure constantly, self-sabotaging myself because I didn't love myself. Because I didn't know myself. I had lost myself completely. And it came to a boiling point where I didn't want to wake up. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's real. And the other thing too is like when you talk about like you suppressed who you were. The way I kind of think about it is, and this is kind of a weird analogy, so everyone listening be like, Marissa's a little off her rocker today. But like, when you make a pot of soup and like you put it in the refrigerator and there becomes this thick layer on top and you look at it and you're like, ooh, that's gross. But
Right,
then like there's this beautiful soup underneath, but you have to get off the thick layer because it's kind of like that thick layer of stuff that you just shoved down and below was this beautiful thing,
right.
but you didn't recognize yourself anymore.
I didn't see myself. I knew because when it all came down to it, I got to a point and I was just laying in bed. I remember saying, "Okay, if you don't help me," talking to God, I said, "If you don't help me, I'm not gonna make it. I can't. I didn't have it. I didn't have it." And I just remember saying, "I can't do this anymore." And then a few weeks later, uh, this when my marriage ended, essentially, and that was I was shaken awake because I was so numb. I didn't feel anything. So I was asleep. I was in a cage I had built myself and it wasn't locked. And I wouldn't get out of it because I couldn't. I didn't know how. And so instead of movement, I was just still and I just sat there. And then I think that's why when I asked for help, the only help that I was going to get was someone waking me up and saying, you can't keep doing this. So that was that moment when my marriage ended that day in one conversation. And I was packing up my stuff one day and I took a picture down that was of me on my wedding day and I didn't recognize that person. I was like, who is this? Because that's not me. I wasn't that person anymore. And I remember I kind of fell to the floor a little bit and I just remember sobbing. But it's one of those cries where you don't even recognize it as a cry. It's almost like a wail. And I had
Yeah.
never cried like that before. I'd never felt like that. And it shook me to my core. Like and it was me waking up.
Yeah.
It was me feeling all the feelings that I hadn't felt for like 6 years bubbled. And I just,
Yeah.
I, and my heart was like trying to beat back. It was fighting to beat just a little because it was
Yeah.
barely beating at that point. And so it was starting to kind of come alive. It's like that scene in The Grinch where his heart kind of,
Yeah.
and it's like, and it hurt, it physically hurt. But I think that scene is very important because it does talk a little bit about mental health and what happens when you start to feel after being numb for so long. People don't talk about that. That's the thing people don't talk about, what that rawness feels like.
And feeling all those things are important.
Mhm.
Like, you
Absolutely.
have to, like, what happens when you shove feelings down, or like for me, I like to put them in little boxes that are really pretty with beautiful bows and I put them in a box, but like I'm not feeling those things, right?
Right.
Like you had spent all this time not feeling those things. You were just shoving them down and shoving and putting things over them and feeling like a shell of yourself. And I think, it's a really important thing to talk about, that there's a difference in what I would call sadness or situational depression, because I don't, I think that's different from like you like clinical depression. Those are different things. Like I've never been clinically depressed. Um I've had probably situational sadness, right? Like where there are things where I'm get in a funk, I call it, but I've never experienced that. But many people I loved have. And it was a really long time ago that I realized that my situational sadness was different from their inability to get out of bed, and that was different. And um when you're aware that someone you love is going through this, right, there are some things you can do to love and encourage, and then some things the person has to do themselves
The
and
work.
want to do themselves.
And that's where the work comes in. So yes, I was shaken awake, and now I was awake, and now I had all these emotions and feelings that I had to sift through and I had to make sense of, and I had to move because I had to take action in my life that I had not been taking action in at all. So I had to wake up and I had to take responsibility, and I had to say, this is a cage you built, and this is a cage you stayed out of comfort, out of fear, out of self-doubt. And that's another thing that was really huge that I've learned over time. And I think you and I have talked about this before when we had a Reiki session, of the not being able to trust myself. I think that was the hardest thing, was not being able to trust myself to make basic decisions. We're not talking about life altering decisions. We're talking about just basic this or that decision. I didn't trust myself because I figured all the decisions up until that point in my eyes had failed. I had failed my marriage. I didn't finish school. I I failed my family. I failed in so many ways. At least that's where my mind was. So
That was your perception.
correct of what was happening, and it wasn't that, but that's what I felt like it was. That's what I thought it was. So in my mind, no decision I made I could trust. And in doing that, I wasn't making any decisions. And I was just kind of going with things as they came. So I had to try little by little to trust myself with things. And if it worked out, okay. If it didn't, I wasn't going to beat myself up about it. I was going to take it apart, find out where I went wrong, and try to fix it and try to make it, make it make sense. And this is where I say you have to be sitting in those moments that are uncomfortable. And that's the hardest part. The quiet moments where no one's around, there's no distractions. And you have to just look at the ugly truth, because it's not pretty. It's not pretty. So you have to look at it, and you have to look at this ugly truth of who you allowed yourself to become to survive. It's a survival thing. And then you have to give yourself grace. Then you have to forgive yourself. And that's a whole nother.
You were doing the best you could. Right. Like I really do think that in those moments where things are dark and when things get complicated and you either do things that aren't in your own best interest, or you act out of character, or whatever the case may be, you say, like, you have to give yourself grace, absolutely. And you also have to understand, I truly believe we do the best we can with the decisions we have, with the information we have at that time. And at the time in which you're making decisions through this lens of not trusting yourself and being depressed and being in a very unhealthy environment, mentally, physically, emotionally, right? There was a lack of basic safety that you were experiencing. You're making decisions when your basic needs aren't being met. And those decisions are, um, to your point, you have to kind of unpack them and feel that, and then you have to have a way to start over, right? Like,
Yes.
so so in the story, you chose to leave, right? Like, you moved across country
Right.
and you literally started over.
Yes.
And, before we get into, like, what happens next, I want you to explain what your heart looked like when you're sitting there, on that very difficult day, and you're like, "Something has to change. I'm lost. I don't recognize myself." I can't imagine looking at the picture and being like, "Who is that?"
It was so surreal. I can see it so clearly that day. Like it literally the I could smell how the kitchen smelled. I remember the
Mhm.
temperature precisely. I remember where my dog was. I remember where my cat, like I remember it very vividly. And I do remember I took the picture down and I was like, who is she? Where did she go? Where did I lose her? Where did that happen? And my heart at that time, the best way I could describe it, it was like a very dark purple, almost like a black. It was borderline purple black, and it was a dry landscape, of course, because there was nothing coming in. There was so much that had gone out, but nothing was being poured back in. So it was lacking blood flow, for the lack of a better word. There was no blood flow, and so it was just dry and it was purple and it was suffocating and the beats were off if it beat at all. And but it was trying and I knew it was trying because I could still feel little flickers of it. So I knew it was still
Mhm.
there, but I just had to shock it back in, shock it back to
Yeah.
life and start giving it what it needed, feeding it what it was so craving. And that was just to find out who I was, to love myself, to ask those questions, to sit in those uncomfortable places and unpack all of that and work through it, make sense of it if I could. What I couldn't make sense of, maybe save it for later, another time, whatever the case may be. But what I could work on, I worked on. What I could change, I changed. What I could, and I'm still doing it. That's the thing. It's an
Yeah.
ever evolving cycle. It never ends. It's just you get to one point and you're like, yeah, I figured that out. That makes sense. And then this comes along. It's like, well, wait a minute. You know, why was I doing this? Where did this come from? So every time you unpack something, you have to deal with it, leave it where it is, and keep going. Is you can't get stuck there, and that's my
Mhm.
problem for so long. As I would get stuck there, and I wouldn't allow myself to feel what I needed to feel in that moment, and then go on from it and leave it there. And we do that a lot. We latch on to
Yeah.
comfortable moments. A lot of times, toxicity becomes comfortable. You know, complacency becomes it's because it's easy. It becomes so you're so used to it. It's every day. You can count on it. You know it's going to be there. Um, but it doesn't mean it's okay, and it doesn't mean it's healthy.
No. When you described your heart, I very much, when you like talk about it being dry, right? Like, I think of like farmland that used to be fertile
Yes.
and, is then completely dry and lacking of, water and nutrients, because you talk about like nothing had been poured back into it. And so when you think about those times of your life, because everybody experiences dry times in their
Yeah.
life, it's true, right? Like,
Mhm.
you have to figure out ways to pour back in,
Right.
and that's one of the things you learned step by step and choice by choice, is how to pour back in
Mhm.
and make that thing that is you
Right.
alive again. And
Mhm.
so let's talk about your second story, which is the rebirth.
Yeah. So rebirth meant a lot to me because once I woke up and started feeling everything, the world shifted and changed. The light changed, how I saw things change. And you don't a lot of times you don't see how bad a situation is until you're not in it.
Mhm.
And then you look
Yeah.
back and you're like, ooh, okay. Now I get
How
it.
did
Like,
I
how did
do
I
that? Yeah.
yes, yes. And then I started to see, okay, I'm stronger than I know. I'm stronger than I ever thought possible. And then I had to say, okay, I had to take responsibility. And that was a hard one. That was a hard one. I had to take responsibility for the role that I played in my own demise. And, and that,
Man,
yeah, I,
say that again. Like, we don't do that. I can't tell you how many, like, whoa, like, I played a part in that.
yeah, like I did that, I did, and I had to own it. I had to, because if I
Yeah.
didn't own it and if I just played a victim and I put it on someone else's plate, then I wasn't gonna heal. I wasn't gonna be okay, and I was doomed to make the same mistakes because I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that victim. I want to be someone who saw the light and moved forward. And that's what I'm trying
Yeah.
to do. But part of that, I had to, like you said, I had to pour back in. And that was finding out, doing the things that I love to do that I stopped doing, which was working in something that I love to do, not that I had to do. A lot of times I selected
Yes.
jobs because I had to survive, not because I really loved them. This job I love, and I do it because I love it. And so that brought me so much happiness. And then being with my family again, that was probably one of the most difficult things, to be so far from, and my, my family, how close
Man,
we are,
thick as thieves. Yep.
and coming home and being welcomed with open arms.
Like you never left and like that's where you were meant to be. Like
Right.
never did it skip a beat, right?
Right. There was no questions. There was
No.
no judgment. There was just, we just wanted you home.
Yeah.
I didn't think that. I was so
But see,
dark.
that was that right, that's like the lies we tell ourselves or the things we make
Oh,
up in our own head to
yes.
get through whatever it is, when the truth
Yes.
is the only place they ever wanted you was
Was
right
home.
there,
Was home.
right? But also they wanted you to be happy, so if that meant you go across the country and you find true love,
Then you
then
do
that's
it.
cool too, but that's the thing about when we have these humans that are our humans, whether it's family by blood or it's family by choice or our friends or communities or whoever, they only want you to be happy and whole. And of course, they want to be selfish with your time. And of course, they want you there to make memories and to be part of the thriving thing that is life.
And I took that for granted so much because, before I left, I was like, oh, it's always my family. They're always in my business. You think the worst things, you know what I mean? And not realizing how blessed you are that people care what you're doing, that people want you to be okay, that people worry about you. And I missed that so much that when I got home, I just relished every minute of it. You want to go here? Let's go. You want to do this? Let's do it. There was never a, but that was pouring back in. So doing that, spending time with my family, reconnecting with them again, finding my spirituality again, that was put on hold because I'm a very spiritual person. And I have that. I've always had it. It's always been part of me. So, but I stopped doing the things that were important to me. Mixing, I make soaps and lotions and things like that. And I did it during COVID because we needed to make money because I got laid off. And so I was doing it and I loved it. I found so much joy in it. And
Mhm.
I started doing it again. And I started doing it on my terms, the way that I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And I recording videos and showing people my products. And there was just so much joy. And that just brought so much joy back into my life. Writing again. I love to write. So writing
Mhm.
again, reading again, doing my makeup, doing my hair, going out outside of the house, getting in the sun, going on my first cruise, getting my car, just everything, the little things, just as long as it was me, as long as it was putting back what I had lost was so important. And learning to love me, all of me, regardless. The weight
Love
loss
you.
was a big part of it. I had to get the weight off. I was very unhealthy. I was very uncomfortable. I was just not happy. And then taking the steps, eating right, making the right choices. I had my cousin, we do it together. And that's my coach, that's my bestie, that's who gets me through, who motivates me. And we did it together and I lost so much weight and I feel amazing. I can move, I can breathe. I feel like I'm getting back to that girl that was in that picture that day and better.
And the thing is too is you did it through focusing on your mind, your body and your spirit.
Right.
And you know, I think sometimes I know for me, I was always really good at focusing on one or the other,
Yes.
never the three, right? But you really started through finding joy, right? So
Yes.
one of the things we talk about a lot on the podcast is your waypoints. These are the waypoints of your life, right? The good, the hard, the aha moments that make up who you are. But what you did was you started finding the things that brought you joy and you doubled down on them
Yes.
and you prioritize doing them over other things, right?
Yep.
And through that process, right, you you started to come back to life in a way that was like I call it all the time, like my care and feeding instructions. Like, what do I need? Because like I don't need the same things you need,
Hmm.
and the same things that your cousin needs, and whatever. Like we all need different things, but when you find out what you need,
Right.
so like you for you, purpose of work is really important. right?
Very.
Purpose of work is huge. I think for all of us, purpose of work is huge, but I don't think we're all ready for that conversation today. But doing things that brought you actual joy, right? To contribute to your family, to feed your family,
Right.
right? To be able
Absolutely.
to be part of this group. And then your transformation that you did physically
Yeah.
was you pouring into your body and trusting your decisions with your food and your workout and all those things. You were basically a giant experiment of trusting yourself again.
Absolutely. That is the best way to describe it. Every decision I am making, have made, and continue to make, as I make it, I do put it through the ringer sometimes, and there's moments where I still doubt myself. There's moments where I'm like,
Mhm,
do I really want to do that? And I have to take a minute and be like, you can make that decision. Yes, you can make that decision. Yes, you are capable of making that decision. And if you're not sure, ask questions. That's another thing I had to learn how to do, was talk. Talk.
mhm,
I I I seem social. I have the ability to talk, but
mhm.
I very much sometimes cannot. Sometimes there are no words. Sometimes my words get stuck and I shut down. I shut down. And I
But there's a
find that,
difference in being social and finding your voice. I
right.
think you're finding your voice. Like, one of my other guests, Marianne, talked about being a people pleaser,
Yes.
and she talked about she didn't even know what she liked to eat. Like, when people be
Mhm.
like, "Where do you wanna go for dinner?" She'd be like, "Wherever you wanna go."
Yes.
Right? Like, whatever you wanna eat. And the truth is, because she had done that for so long, she didn't have her own voice.
Yeah.
She didn't know what she liked.
Yeah. That is very true. And or I like everything. It's either I don't say what I like, or I just say I like everything, just to be fair kind of situation. But and it's true. It's like the Runaway Bride and that scene where he says, you don't even know what kind of eggs you like, and one is this, and it's whatever this guy like, and whatever. And she's, that's changing your mind. He said, no, it's not having a mind of your own. And that hit when I heard that, and I watched that movie again, because I had no mind of my own. I had no concept of what I wanted, what I liked, what I needed, what was right for me, what I liked to eat, what I liked to do. All these things, it was like learning yourself all over again. It was learning who you are. And I'm still peeling back so many layers. There's still so much that I'm learning about myself. There's still so far to go. I mean, there's days where I'm on point, where I'm like, I got this. And then there's days when the pigeons and chickens and ducks aren't all in a row, but at least they're going down the same direction. They may not be in a perfect line, but
But that's the whole thing is, like, this whole journey of return to self,
Mhm.
is not linear,
No.
and it's not like, when I started this journey, I went to, one of my mentors, and I'm like, "Okay, where's the map?
Yeah.
Like, where's the integration plan?" And she looks at me like I'm crazy. I was like, "There must somebody's done this before. There must be somebody, like, knew the way."
Right.
No, like, it's not there's no map.
Nope.
And it's not the same for all of us, but it's been so wonderful to be on this journey. Like, we've both been in this very parallel journey
Yes.
of returning to self and figuring out who we are and who we want to be and how we wanna show up in the world, and what does it look like to care for ourselves.
Absolutely. And that's the key, is caring for yourself. Putting yourself, or you have to choose yourself every day. And I'm learning that.
Man,
Like, you have to get up, and it's a conscious choice that you have to make every
yeah,
day, to pick yourself every day, to choose you.
yeah,
And I, for so long, I chose other people. And there's still moments where I'm choosing other people, out of habit. But if I
mhm,
catch it, I stop it. But no matter what, I choose me every day. And if it comes down to that choice, it will always be me from now on.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that was a very hard lesson to learn. And I'm still learning it, because there's days where I fall flat. But
of
it's
course.
a process. And I feel like I've come so far. And it's taken me a lot to look at it and for what it is. I'm
Mhm.
proud of where I came. I'm not the person I was a year ago, 2 years ago. I'm nowhere near that
No,
person. That person, I've grown from that. I'm a different person, and I take pride in that. And that's hard for me to say, because I'm not the type of person to be proud of herself. I don't do that. I'm proud for everybody else. I clap and cheer for everybody else. I will root and cheer for everybody. I will
oh,
straighten
yeah.
your crown and dust off your robe, but I won't do it for myself. I won't do that for
And, it's so important that we be our own best friend and our own
Mhm.
best cheerleader.
Absolutely.
Um, and, um, I think that as you continue to grow, I think that you should always say thank you to the girl who was dark in a dark place and persevered all those years and chose to continue to keep going even when things were bad, because we don't think that girl,
No,
right? We're like,
no.
well, we're better now. Okay, when
Let me
that's
just
great and awesome. But man, like she did her job. Like
shit.
she held it together, and giving voice to who we were in the dark times
Yeah,
is just as important as being proud in the moments where we got it together.
100%.
Um,
That
and
dark
so
place
as you think,
important.
yeah, man, as you think about what your heart looks like now through the rebirth, will you describe it for us?
It's I would say fuchsia. I love that color. I think it's just it's like a burst of sunshine, you know, or a sunset, I guess. But it's fuchsia, which means the color's coming back. The blood's flowing again. It's starting to find its rhythm. You know, still off, but
Mhm.
it's starting to find its rhythm, and it's being poured into. But the best part is it's being poured in by me. You know,
Yes.
I'm determining what goes in. I'm determining what I'm feeding it to make it continue to get healthy and grow and get its color back so that it can give back again. But also understanding setting boundaries. That's a very big thing for me, is setting those boundaries so I don't depreciate, you know, like my heart doesn't go down again, that it
Yeah.
stays constantly growing and stays constantly beating and alive. But that's my responsibility to do that. I have to remember and do that every day and pour back into it, even in the moments where I don't have the energy to. I have to make myself do it, because at the end of the day, there's nobody coming to save me. There is no,
No one's coming.
yeah, there's no one coming. I have to do it. You know,
No.
there's no backup plan. I am the backup plan. So if it
Right.
doesn't work, you know, so
Right. I'm the first, second, and third string. Like
that's
it's
right.
me.
And that's right. You know, so just embracing that and being thankful. And that's another thing, remembering to be grateful, remembering to be thankful, because otherwise you're never going to move forward if you can't be grateful for where you've come from, where it started to where it is. And in each process in between, because each phase is important. Each phase, just
Yeah.
like in a woman's life, mother, maid, and crone, we follow that path, you know, but each path is powerful. Each path has that power, and that ties me back into my spirituality. But embracing every stage that I'm in, you know, I didn't get the mother stage, but I got my maiden stage and I got my queen stage, and now I'm entering, you know, in between the queen and the crone. But embracing all of those stages, because they're so important, and
Yeah.
they create us as women, and they make us powerful, and we have to take that power back. And I lost it, and now I'm learning to get it back. So
It's so important. So before we say goodbye today, what is one piece of advice that you'd want to leave listeners with?
it's never late. You're never late.
You're never too late. You're always right on time.
Let it happen. You know, just let it happen. Be open. Be open to yourself. And above everything, love you.
Yeah.
Choose yourself every day, even when it's hard. Love yourself every day, even if you have to fake it for a minute.
Mhm.
But do the things that make you happy. Do what makes you happy. Don't live in the past. Don't live too much in the future, because that's like depression, anxiety. Like, don't, not too much here, not too much here,
Yeah.
but definitely be present right now. Enjoy where you're at in this moment right now. Be present every day in that moment, because you don't know what's coming. You already know where you've been. So that's what it is. Learn your lessons, but stay present, stay present, and you know, deconnect, you know, disconnect. Don't get outside, get your feet on the earth, get the sun on your skin. All of these things, I made myself stuck inside. But get out, get outside. The earth is just calling you. Like, put your feet in the grass, you know, and feel the sun on your skin. Just little things. But
Yeah.
above all, love you, love yourself. Find a
Yeah.
reason every day to choose and love yourself, because it will cure so many issues just to find
Yeah.
that love.
It
100%.
really will, really will. And so it's never too late to choose yourself. Start today. If you are listening to this podcast and you're in your car and you feel dark or you feel like you're not choosing you, choose yourself. It's never too late. There's another chapter coming.
Mhm.
And if you don't know what makes you happy, start doing things. Try things until you find the thing that brings you joy. For me, mapping my waypoints was super critical, and knowing that my joy comes from adventure, wonder, and genuine human connection. And I never would have thought that before. I would have thought it would have come from business milestones, which it didn't.
Yeah.
And so it's never too late.
No,
My journey started at 45.
same
Um,
here.
yep. And so please go be your own best friend and
Yes,
choose yourself today.
agreed.
Thank you so much for being here. Your stories were wonderful, and I'm so glad that I get to be on this journey with you, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I was honored to be here. Thank you so much. And I just love you.
Have a good day, everybody.
You too.